Welcome everyone to this week's Fish Friday. Today we are on Fish Friday number 23, and this is a fish that I've caught a lot of. I wouldn't say I caught a lot of, but it's very near and dear to my heart. One of the fish I took an early interest on in my college career. So I hope you enjoy this extremely weird fish as much as I have. We are talking about the American paddlefish. American paddlefish, or Polydon spatula or spathula. It is part of the family Polydontidae. This is the family of paddlefishes. Yes, what a nose. Paddlefish, there's only two species, well, that were around in recent times. There's the American paddlefish and the Chinese paddlefish. However, the Chinese paddlefish was actually declared extinct, I believe, earlier this year. And it's not like there hasn't been a ton of effort looking for the Chinese paddlefish. Between 2006 and 2008, there were over 5,000 net sets, but zero fish. So it's probably gone, which is a very sad thing. This is native to the Mississippi River Basin. So, I believe it's the third largest river system in the world. It is a part of. It used to be found up and down the entire river basin. It is a primitive fish, which means a primitive fish means that it retains characteristics of its very early ancestors. So think like sharks, and these are very much like sharks. A better one, in fact, something that it's even more closely related to is sturgeon. These are part of the same order as sturgeon. Now, these average about 1.5 meters to about maybe 2, which that's around 5 feet on average. That's about how long these are. So it's a relatively big fish. It's very important to remember that this is a freshwater fish. So this is a very normally your freshwater fish do not get near as big as saltwater fish. So that's a pretty hefty fish. They can weigh over 27 kilograms, which is about 60 pounds. So very thick fish as well. And they can live well over 30 years. Some say up to 50. It's very kind of difficult to determine these because the only way to tell the age of these is if they're dead. Well, I don't think if they're dead, but probably. I think they have to remove part of the dentition. The largest ever captured was 2.2 meters long and weighed about 90 kilograms, so about a 200-pound fish. So there is a very wide, even though there's an average, they have a big variety on their sizes. And there's been ones that are caught that are, that, I wouldn't say that big, but over 150 pounds nowadays. It's not often, but rare. Like sharks, these have an almost entirely cartilaginous skeleton, so cartilage, with their only their only bones being their dentition. So think like sharks. Sharks, basically the only thing that survives is a shark jaw. As you can tell on this, these are smooth skinned. They don't really have scales. They actually feel like skin, and unlike sharks, they don't really have that rough sandpapery feel. They're pretty smooth. They're kind of bluish gray to black. And you can tell in this picture, they have a long tapering opercle flap. Just kind of a weird opercle flap shape. They have very small eyes, as you can see in these pictures. Well, that's too early. They have a large mouth, so we'll go back to this picture. So that's their mouth right there. It almost looks like they're frowning because of their big old nose, but it's a large mouth. And then the cool thing about them, obviously, the rostrum, which that is what the nose is. Rostrum. And that rostrum is usually about 1/3 of the entire body length. and they have tens of thousands of sensory receptors on that rostrum. So they're using that as an electroreceptor, and that goes for what these things eat. These eat plankton. So those big sharks, or not sharks, the big whales, what whales eat, they're eating the freshwater versions of plankton. So what they're doing is they're swimming with that nose out, and if that nose encounters a big grouping of plankton, they open their mouth, and these are what are ram suspension filter feeders, meaning that when they eat, all they do, open their mouth and just ram through the cloud and then close it. Yes, I do. We're gonna get into that. So in fact, we'll just get into it now. So here's what it's doing. It's eating right now. You can see its mouth open here. And here's kind of one from the back, and you can see how long that opercle flap is sticking out the back here. So what is happening is water is coming through the mouth in the front, and these gill rakers in the back are catching the tiny plankton. Now, it takes a lot of energy for them to swim with their mouth open. That's why when their mouth is closed, they have such a funny shape. They kind of that grouchy mouth. Because when they open, it's kind of like, you're dragging something behind you. Think like you're taking a bag and you're dragging it in the water behind you, and that bag is closed. You're pulling it along, and it's just doing fine. As soon as that bag opens, it drags you back, and it takes you a lot of energy to pull that bag. It's the same concept with this. So they're keeping their mouth closed so they can swim, and they they open it up when they detect those plankton. Now, these are classified as a vulnerable species of fish, meaning that they're starting to get very close to the endangered status. These have a lot of problems. One of the most prevalent is habitat destruction. So, rivers getting built across, things like that. Dams are a big thing, and we're going to get into dams a little more. Zebra mussels are actually a very bad invasive species for the American paddlefish as well, because remember, zebra mussels, and we've talked about it a couple of times before, zebra mussels are also filter feeders. They take the water in and then they filter it out. Well, zebra mussels do it so well that they actually reduce the amount of plankton, and when you reduce the amount of plankton, these fish can't get as much as they need to survive. And now there is a lot of poaching as well, which has caused a lot of problems. Poaching is not only, these are a sport fish in some of the states where the populations are said to be doing well, which these are caught by snagging, meaning that you kind of pull by it and you grab it with a big hook basically and pull it into your boat. They are also heavily valued for their caviar. When the beluga sturgeon crash happened over in Russia, poaching really shot up for American paddlefish because people were wanting their caviar and they were using the paddlefish as a substitute. And in fact, most of your paddlefish farms, if they are not used for conservation work, are actually done for caviar production. So, just like any of the sturgeons, people love this caviar from this fish. Now, getting into dams. Dams are probably the single biggest factor on why this species is having issues. Not only are dams causing habitat destruction, but these are actually migratory spawners as well. So you kind of think of how salmon, they're out in the ocean and they come in the river. Well, these while they stay in the river, these can go well over 2,000 miles in their migrations before dams and all that. They would travel 2,000 miles to go reproduce. And what's happening is they're coming up and they're hitting these dams, but they can't get over the dam. So they just congregate at the bottom of the dam, and poachers basically have free range to poach. Not only that, they're very slow reproducers. They only reproduce like every 2 to 3 years. So they don't really have much of a chance unless we start removing some dams, because if they don't get far enough up, they may not reproduce, and they definitely won't do it at a rate that sustains the population. Especially now, their migration patterns, they migrate really only around snowmelt, or spring flood. So you're talking about early to late spring. So you do have at least some predictability on them, but that also was what's causing the problem, is that if there's a big snowmelt that happens, then poachers know, hey, we can go to the bottom of the dams and potentially find paddlefish. And these are also highly valued for their meat. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again. If I don't, please be safe. Have a great day. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you do, I would really appreciate it. Please drop a comment. Tell me a fish you'd like me to see. I'm going to keep saying it, even if no one does. But thank you guys again. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones, and peace.